A very good morning to everyone. I'm Moni, metric number 270799. I'll start off with the three things that I have learned from the selected topic, which is topic 6. The first thing that I have learned is how low versus high involvement consumers process the information in an advertisement. When seeing a message, such as an advertisement, high involvement consumers pay greater attention and process the information deeply, developing strong attitudes and purchase intentions. They will scrutinize all the information provided and process the key elements of the message more deeply. On the contrary, low involvement consumers, they will pay less attention and use peripheral processing, generating weak attitudes and increased use of cues. The second thing that I have learned from topic 6 is about the difference between extended and limited problem solving. Extended problem solving is common when a customer perceives that the purchase decision entails a lot of risk and entails much external information. The consumer engaged in extended problem solving when they purchase an unfamiliar, expensive, or infrequently bought product. Whereas limited problem solving is used for product purchase occasionally or when the buyers need to acquire information about an unfamiliar brand in a familiar product category. Consumers engage in this type of buying process when they have had some prior experience with the product or service and the perceived risk is moderate. Last but not least, the third thing that I have learned from topic 6 is about the common type of limited problem solving, such as impulse buying and habitual decision making. Impulse buying is a buying decision made by the customer on the spot when they see the merchandise. The customer usually don't go through the decision making process. Rather, they see a product, recognize an immediate need, and purchase accordingly. Some purchases require even less thought, which is the habitual decision making, that describe a purchase decision process in which the consumers engage in little conscious effort. Moving on to the two questions that I still have left about topic 6 is first, why consumers may have different levels of involvement for the same type of product. Second, what are the factors that determine the level of consumer involvement in a buying decision? Finally, one new thing that I have learned from the reflection of my group members is being contributive to the group, which is a commitment in doing their best. All the group members have been contributive and actively involved in all the assessment given by doing their best as they can for the benefit of the group. That's all from me. Thank you.
My name is Tan and my matrix number is 270907. So the first thing I've learned about from this consumer behavior topic is that the differences between functional and physiological needs. The consumer decision process begins when the consumer they recognize that they have an unsatisfied need and they would like to go from their actual needy state to a different desired state. So the greater the discrepancy between these two states, the greater the need for recognitions will be. Therefore, the functional needs are pertaining to the performance of a product or service, but the physiological needs are pertain to the personal gratification consumer associate with a product and or service. Besides, I've also learned about the post-purchase outcomes. The marketers are particularly interested in post-purchase behavior because it entails actual rather than the potential consumers. To satisfy the customers, who marketers hope to create, become loyal, purchase again, and spread positive words of mouth, so they are quite important. There are three possible post-purchase outcomes, which are the customer satisfactions, the post-purchase cognitive dissonance, and the customer loyalty or the disloyalty. Furthermore, I have also learned about the motive of a consumer to make the decisions. A motive is a need or want that is strong enough to cause the person to seek satisfaction. People have several types of motives, such as those illustrated in Maslow's hierarchy of the needs. For instance, the physiological needs deal with the basic biological necessities of life, such as food, drinks, rest, and shelter. Besides, safety needs pertain to the protections and physical well-being, while esteem needs allow people to satisfy their inner desires. Not only that, the self-actualization occurs when we feel completely satisfied with our life and how we live. However, there are two questions that I still have doubt in this consumer behavior topic. The first question is, I still have doubt about what is the point of having 5 steps in the consumer decision-making process. Secondly, since we have already learned about the wants are goods or the surveys are not necessarily needed but desired. Therefore, the questions for me is how to prioritize the needs and the wants. Lastly, one of the new things that I've learned from my members, the reflections of my members, is the behavior of responsiveness. My group members, they are always so enthusiastic and very responsive during the discussions. For instance, they always alert in every opinion other group members give, then quickly reply to their replies and to their ideas. So this may save the times and effort during the discussions. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Azlinda metric number 271013. 3 things I learned from the topic of customer behavior were about the evolution of alternative that customers use to help in their decision-making process. Alternative evolutions used by users to help their decision process are known as attribute set, which help tripartite, namely universal set, retrievable set, and evoke set. The universal set includes all possible options for a product category, while in the retrievable set, the customer decision-making process is more to a brand or store that can be easily taken out of memory. And another evoke set, the customer use process of information for decision-making with the alternative brand or store that the customer state he or she would consider when making a purchase decision. The second thing I learned is that the 3 possible post-purchase outcomes for customer during the purchase are customer satisfaction, post-purchase cognitive dissonance, and customer loyalty. Customer satisfaction is about the expectation of customer satisfaction with a product through advertising, personal sale, or unsatisfactory sale performance. Post-purchase cognitive dissonance about internal conflict that arise from a mismatch between two beliefs or between belief and behavior, and in customer loyalty to customers who are satisfied with their purchase and buy from the same company again, create a strong loyal relationship with their customer. Finally, learn about the factor used by firm to influence customer purchasing behavior, namely psychological factor, social factor, mechanisms, and situational factor. So psychological factor more into motivated attitudes and so on, if social factor are influenced by family, culture, and reference group. Product mix factors such as price, locations, and promotions, as well as situational factors such as purchase, sensory, and temporal situation and state all influence customer decision making. I have 2 questions. I'm still doubt about the chosen topic. First, how do customers determine their purchasing decisions? In my understanding, customer determine the purchasing decisions when there is a motivation that argues customer to meet the various needs and one of the level according to different interests, and sometimes due to different consumer perception of the product offered in the market in terms of price, quality, design, color, and brand. The next question is why in the buying process, customers say more incentive product that encourage customer to buy without planning are better. It may be due to a lot of meticulous information or that they have made a careful decisions and also minimize any risk they may face when buying without planning. There is always an active interaction response about the tasks that need to be done, and the group member function well until completing the last group task. This causes the situation to become more supportive, and I feel very comfortable discussing the next assessment activity is the new thing that I have learned from my group members.
I would like to share about the 3 things that I have learned from the topic of consumer behavior. The first thing is about the difference between the internal locus of control and external locus of control. The locus of control is one of the factors that will affect the consumer self-process. The individual with an internal locus of control are found to engage in a greater degree of information served than the external. This is because The people who have an internal locus of control believe that they have some control over the outcome of their action. But the people who have an external locus of control believe that fate or other external factors will control all the outcomes. The second thing that I have learned is about the 5 specific needs in Maslow hierarchy of needs. The Maslow hierarchy of needs is presented as a pyramid with the more basic needs at the bottom. Psychological needs are the base of the hierarchy, followed by safety, love, esteem, and self-actualization. The need at the bottom must be fulfilled before the individual addresses to the higher needs. The third thing that I have learned is about the compensatory decision rule and non-compensatory decision rule. In evaluating alternatives, compensatory decision rule assumes that a consumer trade-off one characteristic against one another, while the non-compensatory decision rule is used to choose a product or service on the basis of one characteristic or subset of a characteristic, regardless of the value of its other attribute. There are 2 questions which I still had doubt regarding the topic of consumer behavior. The first question is, what is the advantage to your compensatory decision rule? The second question is, how can the marketer identify the potential customer through Maslow hierarchy of needs? One new thing that I have learned from the reflection of my group member is punctuality. This is because all of my group members complete their allocated part of tasks on time. This enables us to double-check the assignment before submission. It helps to reduce the mistake they may occur.
Proof that I'm loyal. Things that I've learned about the chapter 6 is, firstly, a purchase decision made by consumer undergoes several processes start with the need recognition, information source, alternative evaluation, purchase and consumption, and lastly, the post-purchase. It can help the marketer to understand the expectation of the consumer and what makes a consumer to buy a product. Secondly, the post-purchase also might not be ignored by the marketer because it entails action later than the potential customer. This is when a customer is assessing whether or not they are happy with your purchase. How they'll feel will affect whether they make further purchase from your brand. Thirdly, I also learned the importance of social factor in consumer decision process. It is the effect of people and group influencing one another through the family, reference group, and culture. Many consumer decisions are made by the family member on behalf of the family. Consumers also influenced by the things they hear from the reference group. It happens every time when you ask someone for a recommendation or an opinion about a product or service. Consumers also make purchase decisions based on the culture because they will be more familiar to a product which has the common cultural heritage of themselves. However, I still have some doubts regarding the chapter 6. Number 1 is whether it is difficult to determine the state of a consumer decision process. And number 2 is, among the factors influencing the consumer decision process, which one is the most important factor? Besides, I also learned one new thing from the reflection of my group member, which is cooperation. Cooperation is an important element for accomplishing an assignment because it helps to solve the problem. When we face a problem during the assignment, all the group members collaborate with each other to find a solution through the brainstorming. We can exchange the idea with each other to come up with a creative and best way of doing the things. Moreover, through cooperation, all the group members can help to address when one member faces the problem. Therefore, cooperation making the overall process of our assignment operate more efficiency.
The first thing that I learned from chapter 6 is what is the difference between a need and a want. Need is referred to something that are necessary to have in order for survival. For example, there is food and shelter. We cannot live without this thing and it is not constantly changed. But want is referred to things that are nice to have but it is not necessary to have for survival. For example, this is referred to expensive and branded products or services. Secondly, the things that I have learned from chapter 6 is there are two types of needs. It can be functional needs and psychological needs. Functional needs is referred to how marketers and also the seller demonstrate and showing what is the functions of the product will meet the customer needs. For example, hair shampoo for washing their hair and for the washing machine for washing clothes. This is the functionals of the product. This is the basic needs that the marketers will use in the marketing consumer behavior. But for the psychological needs, it refers to the personal enjoyments towards the product or services. For example, Chloe has already owns a lot of handbags, but when the handbags has special title such as the limited edition series, and this is the psychological needs whereby the persons or any consumers will purchase it to fulfill their psychological needs towards expectations of the product or services. Thirdly, the things that I have learned from chapter 6 is internal and external search for information. Before we discuss about what is the internal and external search for information, we need to know that after we determine, which is the customer has determined their needs and what their needs are, they will basically search for knowledge and the several solutions to meet their needs. So there are two sources to help them to search for the knowledge towards a product or a services. It can be internal and external search for information. In an internal search for information, it refers to the customer owns memory and knowledge on the product or services based on their past previous experience they have used this kind of product and services. And for the external search for information, it can be refers to the customer has no prior knowledge over the product or services, and how can they get the information from the product and services? They get it from the personal sources, which is from their friends or family, or they can also access the public sources such as the online customer forums to get more about the details and information over the product and services they want to use. The question that I have still doubt with chapter 6 is number 1, what is the basic psychological need skill? And number 2, the seeking an information from an employee about a product or service is recognized as external research for information under the consumer behavior. The one new thing that I have learned from the reflections of my group mates is the value of appreciations. This is because when every time we completed the assignment, every of my group mates will send their gratitude and thanks in the group chat, and working with them have made me feel appreciated.
Hi, my name is Jayashree A. There are 3 things that I've learned about chapter 6. First and foremost, I've learned that goods or services are actually desired by consumers. Not all goods or services are a need for consumers. Body shop products, for example, are called desirable products because they provide short-term satisfaction and also help the society as they are associated with healthcare foundations. Second thing that I've learned is consumers do internal and external searches for information about various options that exist to satisfy the need. Internal research refers to consumers' memory or recollection of a product, oftentimes triggered or guided by personal experience. External research is conducted when a person has no prior knowledge about a product, which then leads them to seek information from personal sources or public sources. Third is, I've learned that post-purchase cognitive dissonance occurs when a consumer questions the appropriateness of a purchase after his or her decision has been made. If the consumer feels the quality of the product fails to meet expectation, they may become regretful. They may even take steps toward getting a refund. According to post-purchase dissonance theory, the effects can be felt long after that only. 2 questions I still have doubt about chapter 6. First doubt is, why do consumers desire some goods and services when it is not a need? Many companies today have a customer focus. In this approach, consumers' wants and needs are the drivers of all strategic marketing decisions. Second doubt is, how do brands make sure that consumers do not question the appropriateness of the purchase after his or her decision has been made? Our customer will also be able to influence the purchase decision of others because he will likely feel compelled to share his feelings about the purchase. One new thing that I've learned from the reflection of my group members, good teams can be recognized the value within each member. When we have discussions, everyone feels that they have something beneficial to offer and they may be more willing to use their strengths to benefit of the team. Some may not be as vocal as others, but we manage to hear everyone's ideas, give everyone a chance to speak and volunteer to help others. Thank you.
The first thing that I have learned is that perceived risk can be categorized into 5 types, namely performance risk, financial risk, social risk, physiological risk, and psychological risk. Performance risk involves the perceived danger inherent in a performing product. For example, the consumer may be afraid that if they buy a car, the engine might malfunction. With regard to the financial risk, the consumers will assess whether the benefits of the product outweigh the investment that they make. Moreover, social risk involves the fears that their purchase will not be regarded positively. Besides, physiological risk refers to the fear of an actual harm that may be caused by the product. Under this risk, consumers will consider whether an item could cause bodily harm to them. Lastly, under the psychological risk, consumers will hesitate to buy a brand as they are worrying on whether that brand can create a right identity that they want. Moving to the second thing that I have learned, there are 3 components of attitude of the psychological factor. Firstly, the cognitive components involve a person's belief system or knowledge. Secondly, affective component involve emotions or feeling about the object. And thirdly, the behavioral component pertains to our actions based on what we know and feel. All these components are essential to form our attitude and therefore affect consumers' decisions. The third thing that I have learned is that learning and memory is also one part of the psychological factor which can influence the consumer decisions process. Learning and memory indicates to a change in a person's thought process that arises from their experience. Therefore, consumers may make decisions based on the experience gained from their learning and memory. As mentioned earlier, there are 5 types of perceived risk that may discourage a purchase. My first question is, if there is only one perceived risk, such as social risk, would a purchase still be discouraged by the only one risk? Moving on to the second question, sometimes people will act in an illogical way. For example, they like smoking, although they know the bad effects of smoking. Therefore, my second question is whether all the 3 components are truly in line to affect a person's attitude. The things that I have learned from my group member is good time management. As we all know, students are occupied with many online assessments. Nevertheless, my group members still can perform their tasks well. For example, they are able to complete their tasks before the internal due date. Therefore, I have learned from them to manage my time well so that I can finish my tasks effectively.